this story made the rounds yesterday a little bit. NFL reporter Matt Lombardo tweeted on Thursday that he has heard that the 49ers staff has been underwhelmed by Trey Lance thus far. This is also following a report from Adam Schefter a couple of months ago in which he says that Trey Lance was probably further behind than people realize, which maybe leads the 49ers to maybe not want to trade Jimmy Garoppolo as much as maybe the some of the stuff out there is said to believe. And Jimmy Garoppolo obviously recovering from his surgery and the decision to have that. I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is going anywhere. If any of this stuff is out there, and I know, Brady, you've thrown this out there, how ready is Trey Lance going to be? We didn't really get to see a whole lot of him last year. The longer this goes on, the more I believe Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be a 49er. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, but I think Garoppolo is going to be there, and I would venture to guess that Garoppolo is going to start some games for the 49ers this upcoming season. I'll call my shot right now.
Yeah, look, I didn't have Trey Lance that highly ranked last year as far as the quarterback draft class. And it wasn't necessarily anything that he did or didn't do. It was the fact that he only played one game in 2 years. So the truth of the matter was he only started 1 year during his time in North Dakota State, and that was a few years before COVID disrupted everything, and then he had one exhibition game. And he looked very raw. And I think the times that people saw him play last year in San Fran, he looked very raw. Now, the good thing is I think as you watch the course of a game, he got better as the game went on and started to settle in. But he wasn't Trevor Lawrence. He wasn't Justin Fields to me or Mac Jones, guys who I felt like were a little more ready and prepared for the next step at the NFL level. Now, I was never a fan of Zach Wilson. I like Trey Lance better than him. But the truth is there was going to always be a lot of development with Trey Lance. And I honestly believe the move by the 49ers up to the spot they went to maybe had more to do with what they thought they could get in return for that third pick from another team than maybe what they were going to do in that spot. So that's just my theory on it, and I don't know if the truth will ever come out. I think we've seen some tea leaves of what San Francisco and who they were trying to get. But the reality is now is they've got Jimmy G there, who did what was in his best interest this offseason and getting surgery, and they find themselves in a position where why not ride it out? I said this when this past year ended. Everyone thinks that Jimmy G is going to be somewhere else. Where's he going? Like, who's the trade partner? Not only have those trade talks stopped because of the surgery, but beyond that, everyone's kind of aligned in what they've got moving forward. Even Carolina, to a degree, I don't think a third-round pick in Matt Corral negates you from trading for Jimmy G, but still, it's like you've kind of addressed it in a way. So I don't know if there's any clear-cut spot where you're saying this would make a lot of sense for Jimmy G. The only other team, and I keep throwing this out there, is the New York Giants. And I know they want to be all in on Daniel Jones, but that's just a team where I think if things go south and you think you can be competitive, you'd like to have someone there like that that's had success, that's been to a Super Bowl before. So, it's probably in the best interest of the 49ers to keep Jimmy G if they don't feel like Lance is ready. But, again, the hard thing with that is then what does that say about Trey Lance and your decision to trade up and give up all that draft compensation to go get him in the first place?
Do we know where he's at in his healing process? Like, is he totally rehabbed yet? Is he
No,
back?
I don't think
I think
so.
it's like a 6-month deal. Like, he wouldn't be ready until the summertime.
See, here's my thing. If the injury isn't, if the surgery isn't a part of the equation, I think it's a foregone conclusion that Jimmy Garoppolo is still the starter for the 49ers. I think it's the injury that makes it a debate altogether. And then it now leads me to the idea of if you have a guy who's going to be rehabbing all the way into the summer and you're hoping that he's going to be prepared for the start of training camp and hope that you have no setbacks, then now the question becomes, at what point in time do you start to, either panic that Trey Lance may not transition into being a starting caliber quarterback for this team, and B, do you start losing confidence in the fact that this is your backup and this was a first round draft pick that was supposed to transition into being that starting guy? I just wonder how this will play out when the whispers become louder, as it applies to the pick on Trey Lance. And what bearing does that have on John Lynch and on Shanahan? And I know people are high on them, and this team has overachieved through some pretty interesting circumstances. But I mean, what does that, if this turns into a missed pick, what does that look like? How is that being judged? How is that being measured?
I mean, Trey Lance also got banged up last year. I mean, he hurt his finger the final preseason game against the Raiders. Then he suffered some sort of a knee injury, like week 5 or 6, whatever it was, during the regular season. I mean, they have no clue what they've gotten him. And so what do? You just throw him out there? If you say Jimmy Garoppolo's still on the roster, and you are dead set on wanting to find out what you got in Trey Lance, if you put Trey Lance out there the first 4 or 5 games of the season, and next week we'll find out what the schedule looks like, so it'll be probably easier to answer this. But if you throw him out there the first 4 or 5 weeks of the regular season and he's not good, is Kyle Shanahan just going to bench him to throw in Garoppolo, or are they pot committed at this point to Trey Lance to where, no, we're going to let him go through his struggles, and that's just going to be that, and then we're going to pay Garoppolo $25 million to be a backup all year? Like that's what I wonder. That's where I wonder what San Francisco's thinking is on Trey Lance this upcoming season.
It's tough to know at this point, right? I mean, we'll only know once we get into it and then figure out when Garoppolo is healthy if there's a market for him. The last thing that's always a wild card, and you can never predict, is if there's an injury to a starting quarterback. That's going to potentially cause him to miss the rest of the season or a portion of the season, right? That's happened before. You don't have to look back too far to look at Teddy Bridgewater and his injury and how that impacted the Eagles, with Wentz then being the starter and Bradford going to Minnesota. So there's all those scenarios that could play themselves out. That's the only thing that I think you keep in your back pocket. And whether you're the Browns holding on to Baker Mayfield, if they're thinking that, or even if you're the San Francisco 49ers, I think in both cases the really interesting thing is in Cleveland you've got a potential suspension where you look at the other 2 quarterbacks you have in your roster and go, yeah, Mayfield when healthy is probably a better option, but do we want to deal with that and what that all might mean? And then on the other side with San Francisco, it's like, well, Garoppolo's not healthy, but if and when he is, do we really want to keep him on the roster if we're fully saying we're moving forward with Trey Lance and then have him sit here as a backup? He's done that before, but to your point, like what happens if Trey Lance falls flat on his face? You don't think people are going to be cheering for Jimmy G? I actually think Jimmy G is in a great spot because he's either going to be a wanted commodity once he is healthy by potentially another team, either via injury or just overall desire because he gives them a better option. Or if it happens to work out where he has to ride the bench, if things don't go well for Trey Lance, he's going to be sitting there with a smile on his face like, yeah, I'll go and be the hero for this team because that's a roster that's ready to win now. And I think that's the difficult path for San Fran is looking with the pieces that they have. If they stay healthy, there's no reason why they couldn't win the NFC West or they couldn't challenge the LA Rams in that regard.
It's a short runway for certain for Trey Lance. If Jimmy Garoppolo is indeed sitting out watching and waiting, because again, the only thing that people really can complain about, I mean, maybe there's 2, but maybe the main one is Jimmy Garoppolo staying healthy. Otherwise, I mean, I know there's been criticisms on him being able to make the big throws at big moments and big times. But, I mean, again, if I'm talking from the player perspective, former player, I would love to have been on a team where our quarterback was good enough to be a part of us making it to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Because that's ultimately – you can't fake that. You got to be good enough as a game manager – like a Trent Dilfer, but enough talent in what you bring to the game as a game manager to fit in for you to get there, or it's the other side of it where you're just really good enough as a quarterback to play ball well enough for your team to make it all the way to the final game of the year. Regardless of what side you fall on what Jimmy Garoppolo is, he's not only been that guy to make it into the Super Bowl, but he's also been that guy to overcome some of the odds. I mean, they did not have the greatest, of health as a team last season, and they were still able to pull their season back together again and make something of it. And I think a large part of that is because of the way Jimmy Garoppolo is as a player and as a person. I think there's a tremendous value to him as this team's quarterback, and I think that makes it tremendously difficult for someone who isn't prepared to be an outright leader and an outright starter as the guy that comes in and takes that position from Garoppolo.